Good morning, everyone. I'm Lori Dan, and this is Organizational Health and KPIs with Marie Stacks of Boost Midwest. Marie serves as CEO and president of Boost, a national firm that specializes in operations, optimization, and strategic growth. Boost Midwest offers operations audits, product management, and operations professional services. With a background in both small and corporate environments, Marie is able to bring fresh perspective to the company she serves, focusing on reducing waste, optimizing operations, and elevating results. Stacks and her team use Boost's proven hands-on approach with growth-minded clients. She and her team deftly implement sustainable solutions that align and amplify each client's organizational strengths, all while equipping the clients to carry out these solutions long-term. And along with her is her buddy, Justin Murdoch, who serves as a client associate at Boost Midwest. Justin's worked on projects with several nonprofit organizations and public sector partners. So at this point, I'll put myself on mute and then you can take it from here.
Thank you so much, Lori. We're excited to be here, and I'm going to start my screen share real quick. We'll start there. And we're definitely looking forward to sharing with you guys a lot more about kind of just how we work and the way our brains think, and hopefully share that knowledge with you, so that today when you walk away, you'll have some things you can begin to use quite literally today if you want. So to get us started, just a quick look at the agenda. We're going to go over KPIs. That's our main goal today, and run through a few examples, how to select your own. And we're also hoping to discuss a few of the key areas of organizational health where we kind of dive in, and areas that you could start to look at if you're not already, to strengthen your organization overall. And then, of course, we're going to leave you with a few steps that you can take to get started, and to ensure that your changes actually stick. I think a lot of times we love to create change, test things out, try new things, and then inevitably a couple of weeks later we realize, oop, we've slipped back to our original old habits. So our hope is that you'll walk away today with some tips and hopefully some questions and next steps. So like Lori mentioned, I'm Marie Stacks, and you'll also be hearing from Justin Murdoch on our team. We're also joined by Nikki and Bill on our team as well. So please feel free to drop any questions into the chat. We will stop a few times throughout, and then of course we'll have time at the end for questions. But to get us started, we do want to start with a poll. So we're going to do this a little uniquely in that you're actually going to get to answer this poll inside the chat instead of on an actual poll today, which is super simple and easy. I numbered these for you. So our first question is, what do you currently track any KPIs? And if so, how often? So that's what we're asking here today. If you do it every month, then if you'll type 1 into the chat, that'll be great. And I love it. And we've got a couple that have already started to answer. Awesome. So you guys are already kind of in the KPI mindset. I love it. And it's that time of year too, where we're setting goals. And so I imagine a lot of us have set goals recently. So start thinking through, what are the goals I've set for myself this year? Because we're going to use those in this next segment here. But awesome. I love it. I'm trying to see if we have any 3 or 4s. Oh my goodness, you guys are rock stars. It's not a single 3 or 4. I love it. And it's okay, because sometimes I'm still at 3. So, all right. Well, let's keep rolling. We're going to start. I'm going to hand it over to Justin, and he's going to dive into KPIs.
Yeah, well, it sounds like we're dealing with a bunch of KPI rock stars over here. So maybe you all already have your favorite definition. But before we continue this discussion of KPIs, let's make sure that we have a common definition that we can use going forward. So for the purposes of this presentation, we're going to use the definition, a quantifiable measure used to evaluate the success of an organization, employee, etc., in meeting objectives for performance. And there's a couple key features of this definition that I like to highlight. Number one, these are quantifiable measures. We have to be able to put a number to them. And then also KPIs are very closely tied to objectives. So like Marie was talking about, we're in the process of setting those goals for the year, and we want to make sure that the KPIs actually measure towards those. So with this common definition in mind, let us continue on to considering your KPIs. So first of all, when considering which KPIs to include for your organization, we always like to start by using your goals as well as strengths and any operations audit findings. It's important to consider what can really be tracked by each KPI. So for example, if you're noticing that your call count is low, maybe that doesn't actually matter if your call quality is poor. So asking, why does this KPI matter and what does it measure is very important. And that helps us out. And when we're evaluating the intent of each KPI in the bigger picture, figuring out what will help you drive towards your goals and improve quality, efficiency, and effectiveness. And finally, it's also important to remember that this is a rear view mirror concept. So KPIs should be used to analyze growth over time, but they may not be the right tool to guide and develop transformation moving forward. And that's in part the role of an action plan. And so with these considerations in mind, we can start putting those KPIs into action. And yeah, when we're putting these into action, we find that it's often useful to take annual goals and break them down into quarterly and monthly targets. You can then monitor progress towards these monthly targets and break them down into weekly activities that will help you meet those targets. And to maintain momentum, it is crucial that you make an action plan that includes task owners and due dates. We also recommend having recurring meetings to help guide that change. For example, a committee that is focused on implementing these initiatives that help improve your organization. And it's best that this is considered part of an individual's job duties rather than an add-on, to emphasize this clear priority placed on the change management components. And in those meetings, before leaving a meeting, make sure that you schedule the next touch point. That creates a level of accountability as well as consistency for keeping changes on track. And finally, celebrate. Even the smallest changes should be highlighted and celebrated no matter what. And the way that we like to do that is we find this helpful to add a recurring agenda item to recurring meetings, like celebrations, fun finds, and wins. And that really helps to decrease change fatigue, and it helps keep your employees' success and goal-oriented. And with that in mind, I'll pass it back over to Marie to discuss.
Awesome. All right, so we're going to go and run through an example, and I want you guys to jump in and share a few with us as well. So like Justin mentioned, we're really beginning with the end in mind. We want to reach a goal that we've set for ourselves. I like easy math. So in this example, we're going to say that we want to sign 12 new contracts in the year. So that means we need one a month, right? And that means that as we break down that monthly goal, we need to figure out, how do we measure what we're doing and what do we really need to do each week to get to this goal? Again, easy math. So for each new contract, I know that I need 10 discovery calls. So that means that I've got to be able to get through 10 discovery calls in a month, right? On top of that, to get to those 10 discovery calls, I have to do prospect calls. And I know everybody has a different sales process, but we've simplified it for this. So everybody is going to do 3 prospective calls per discovery call, which means we need 30 discovery calls. No, excuse me, 30 prospective calls plus 10 discovery calls every month. So that's 40 calls a month. And so we need to figure out, number one, is that doable? Do I have enough time on the calendar to actually get through all of these calls every month? And if so, how do I track it? And so we want to track how many new prospect calls have we completed each week. Again, thinking about, this is a rear view mirror. I'm going to sit down on Friday and I'm going to tally up how many I've done, right? Or if you're using a CRM tool, you can probably just look there and it'll tell you automatically. The other thing I'm going to do is count up my discovery calls. Did I, get to all the discovery calls I'd said I'd do every week? And then most importantly, because this is what's getting us to our actual big goal, is how many contracts did I get signed this month? So when we look at these pieces put together like this, and we suddenly realize, I haven't signed any contract in 2 months. Well, then we go back and we look at our KPIs and we go, oh, it's because I only did 2 calls this whole month. So you get to where you realize, okay, this is a rear view mirror. I'm looking at what I did, but it also can be used to pre-plan out what you need to do. So if anybody has a goal that they have kind of ready and on the tip of their tongue for the year, I'd love to hear it. And we could walk through a few KPIs that you might consider for those goals. Anybody want to share or hop off mute? And it doesn't have to be easy math. All right. Well, we'll give you guys some examples. That's kind of what we're here for, right? And we'll come back to this and dive
How
back into
about,
it. Yeah.
maybe Elliot has one he can share. Sorry, Elliot.
Well, we do. You know, the trouble is I don't have all the backup data to do the math. So if we want 5 new clients a month, because I generally think in terms of months and then just accumulate it to pick up the annual. Because I'm new in the sales process, I don't know exactly how many calls I have to make.
Yes.
Because
So
I don't have
think
a historical ratio yet.
for
How
that,
do I
Elliot,
determine
I
that?
honestly think you might actually spend this first quarter tracking your calls and the types of calls. If you can even start by saying, creating out your pipeline by tracking your calls, and then that'll help you determine what the KPIs need to be. So that's actually a wonderful example of, we know we want to hit this goal, but we've never tracked data on it before. So what do we need to start tracking? Do you have a CRM, like a managing system that you're going to use for communication?
We do, and first I actually have to take the tutorials in how to use that, because I don't want to interrupt Dawn's flow.
Well, and I will say a
questions.
lot of those tools have the reporting capabilities already built into them. So I would, as you're learning the system, learn what the reports are, and then almost try to use the system to fit the reports as best you can. And that way you have a lot of clarity when you get down the process a little way. So I think that's it's a wonderful place for you to be, actually, because you get to kind of build it fresh. And everybody makes mistakes as you go in. So expect that some of your data is not going to be perfect this year, but then next year you'll at least have some retrospective data to kind of compare to.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, Lori, thanks for putting him on the spot. That was a fun one. And I think too, you guys will get a sense as we go through kind of organizational health that some KPIs are not as clean and cut and specific to revenue. So I know we started with kind of revenue thought process type KPI for our example. That's because it's the easiest one for us to go get. It's really easy to go see what dollar amount we collected this month. So we're going to dive in and head over to our key areas of org health. So the biggest piece that I like to point out on this particular set of information is the fact that we use puzzle pieces for a reason. And the other thing about the puzzle pieces is that there's no border that you can see here. So we do that for a couple of different reasons. The biggest reason being that as you're building your organization, as you continue to add in different components and adjust to the market, adjust to your clients, adjust your services, you're going to continue to add components and pieces to support your organization. So these 4 in the middle here, we consider your core kind of key areas of health. They are what we measure when we go in and do any of our operations audits and assessments, but they are not the only pieces of your organization that you should consider looking deeply into to say, okay, where can we improve? Where are our strengths? So it's a nice little visual piece. We use it throughout, but I do want you to kind of keep in mind that there's more to it than just these 4. But today we're going to start with organizational structure, operations optimization, communication, and team dynamics. So we're just going to do these 4 today. And we're going to start with what we like to call is the foundation. So when you're looking at your org structure, you're thinking about the foundation of your business, and think about it as if you're building a house. And in particular, we're going to talk a big estate, right? And you don't start by just building the foundation of your kitchen. You start by building the foundation of the full structure. Now, your budget might reduce you to where you can only put the walls up and the, you know, pieces in for the kitchen today because you're smaller. You need to start at this kind of condensed in space of the floor plan. But then as you grow, as you expand, you can add on, and the foundation's already there. You're not having to reinvent your systems. You're not having to renegotiate different setups for, you know, your tech stack and things like that. So as you're building out your company and your vision, we're really looking at your org chart. That's a piece of your foundation. How do you ultimately want your org chart to look? Where do you sit in your org chart at the end of the day? Reporting structure. How many layers are you going to have in your company? Again, some of this is going to change as you grow, but at least having the vision to say, here's where we want to head for phase 1 of our growth. That's a good place to start. Define job roles and delineation of responsibilities. It's always good to know who's doing what so that you don't get in their way, number one, but so you can also support them. So keeping that in mind, let's look at why it matters. In this case, for org structure, it really matters because we want to make sure that everyone is productive. If I know what I'm doing every single day, I know what my job responsibilities are, I know who to go to for the other pieces to support me, my productivity is going to be great. If I'm productive, I feel valued, my employee satisfaction is going to increase. And we all know that a solid employee satisfaction also means lower turnover, better retention rates on your employees, and a lower cost overall. And then creating team synergy. So knowing where you're going to go for your information, knowing what you do as an employee, it creates synergy because now everybody has their role and we're all working together in this crazy puzzle, right? So how do you measure it? So I'm going to throw this over to Justin and let's talk about some KPIs.
Yeah, and we're kind of starting with one of the trickier areas of organizational health because KPIs are often tied to the organizational structure. They don't necessarily measure it. Instead, sometimes they're influenced by it. But for organizational structure especially, it's also important to keep in mind that many of these KPIs will have overlap through the different areas of organizational health as we move deeper. So keep that in mind. But starting with KPIs that will capture the why for organizational structure, first we have average position per person. And this refers to how many positions each person fills in your organization at the same time. Like, for example, maybe the finance person also handles reporting and marketing, and that's just a lot. And that's indicative of kind of like Marie was talking about, maybe there's some confusion with delineation of responsibilities in those different dimensions of organizational structure. So that's average position per person. The second one we keep in mind is speed of training to integration. So that refers to how long it takes to make new team members productive, right? Next, we have employee turnover rate. So how often are you losing those established team members who have already been integrated into the team? And then next we have employee engagement. So how engaged are the employees that you're retaining that stick around? And then finally, employee satisfaction. And you'll definitely see this one pop up again in the other areas, but how satisfied are the employees that you're retaining? So these are just a few KPIs that we like to keep in mind when we're thinking about organizational structure.
So I'm going to take a quick pause. I want thumbs up, thumbs down in the middle. How are we doing on speed? I know we're going through a lot of information, and so I want to take pauses where it's necessary. We're doing okay. Slow down. We're doing good. Okay, loving it. All right. So our next phase, and a couple of you hopefully will get a chuckle out of this because this is what I hire for, and it's the GSD factor. So this operations optimization zone of your company, this piece is how you get things done, or the GSD factor of getting stuff done. So I often find that if you get this as a part of the people you bring on board to your team, then you ultimately get it in your company. It's a culture thing. But it also means that you are going to be able to consistently deliver for your clients. If you've got the right processes in place, you can always deliver. And that means you also can manage projects efficiently, or make sure that your services are being delivered on time every time, or in the quality and manner that you expected. And ultimately, that means your client satisfaction is going to be through the roof, right? We want it to be up and up. So I kind of already told you why it matters in a way. Those are the pieces of it. But why it really matters is you're going to end up meeting your sales and revenue goals. If you want to have more business, then you have to be able to satisfy your current ones and hopefully keep them, right? It also is going to maximize your team's strengths. When you're able to bring people and processes and build them on the strengths of the existing team, then you know where your gaps are and you can fill it in. And again, as you grow, as you expand out that org chart, you're going to constantly bring in more strengths to the team. And it's going to compensate for some of those weaknesses that either yourself as a leader or some of the other team members might have. And then, of course, improving client satisfaction. No one has a 5-star perfect rating on Google unless you are genuinely like paying people type deal. But if you've got anything above a 4.2, or, you know, I think you're doing pretty great on Google. And I know some of us probably don't have Google ratings, but knowing where you stand with your clients, checking in with them. If you have a service that goes regularly, it's a recurring monthly thing, and it's years and years and years, are you checking in with your clients periodically? Are you doing executive touch points? Are you sending out surveys? Are you doing pulse checks? And then if you've got project-based clients, when you get done with a project, do you ask them how things went? Do you do any kind of debrief? So checking in to see how your client satisfaction is doing is a big piece of it too. So Justin, what are some of the KPIs we should look at here?
Great question. And these I'm going to go through pretty quickly because there's quite a lot. Really, it ties into a lot of the traditional KPIs that we think of. So first of all, we've got revenue to goal and year to date. Classic. Next we have profitability. We have growth rate year over year, client satisfaction rating. So not only are you getting stuff done, you're getting it done well and to the client's expectations. Next we have new business as a % of revenue. Helps to make sure your business is growing. % of return and repeat customers, project delivery success rates, and on-time project completion. So that's kind of our laundry list to get started with. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, it's easy to go to those revenue ones, right? So I think, Justin, we end up always having some revenue ones in every component, I think, of our business, as well as, you know, retention rates for our employees and our clients. So, all right. Communication. So who thinks it's really easy to communicate? Good. I'm not seeing any hands. That means you agree with us. This is the hard science, you guys. I mean, I think communication in any aspect of your life gets tricky at some point. And so it's definitely one of the areas that we think simple is better, but it is not always easier. It's often quite harder. And leadership here really, really matters. What a leader says and what they do has to align. And, you know, you really have to be intentional about the discussions you're having. When you go into a meeting, do you have a set agenda? Do you have a set goal for that meeting? And if so, do you stick to it? Do you rabbit hole down a million different ways? So think about the team meetings that you're hosting. Think about the conversations you're having with your clients, current and prospective. Are you staying on point with where you want to be? And then sitting in the difficult conversations. It's, again, one of the reasons the communication is hard is sometimes we have to sit and listen and take the information in that we aren't comfortable with. And so I think being able to lead in our companies by actually sitting through those conversations, having them ourselves, that's what makes for a better team. It's what makes for a better client experience. And really, and honestly, it makes you successful, because if you set the expectations, no matter how hard it might be, then you end up delivering on those expectations every time. So why does it matter? Kind of already said. Clarity isn't complex, it's consistent. So it matters because the more consistent you are, the easier it gets. The more consistently you have intentional discussions, the more often you're able to have them and everyone's on the same page. You're going to be able to continually build on your progress. If you're constantly celebrating your wins every week, we actually have, I know we kind of mentioned it earlier, celebrating the wins, put it on your agenda. Every week, start off the week with what's a win? What's a win this week? What's a fun fact? Our team is known for fun facts. If you need one, call us. But constantly building on that progress, even the little steps. There is no right path. There's only the next right step. So celebrate it. And then you're going to end up building camaraderie and support. So as you share your failures with your team, as each other gets more comfortable, you build that trust across the team, you ultimately find that you've got this immense camaraderie across the team as well. All right. KPIs for communication, Justin. What do we have?
Yeah. Well, this may come as a shock, but some of these relate to the previous KPIs we've mentioned. First, we have our favorite employee satisfaction score. So we mentioned this previously, it definitely ties into communication. Next, we have the surprise rating. So this is how often does a company announcement surprise your team? And if every announcement is a surprise, maybe that's indicative of some problems with communication. Next, we have open rates, internal or external. So are people actually receiving the messages that you're putting out there? We have employee feedback. What are your team members saying? And ease of scheduling internally. Are you able to talk together when needed? And these are just a few to get us started on communication, but clearly there's more to dive into as well.
You know, and I think for those that do marketing, and I think Nikki probably is going to appreciate this comment too, we track our external marketing open rates all the time. We're always like, oh, what's our open rate? How did we do? And we've got benchmarks and average, standards across the industry. And Kelly, you probably know this as well, but we very rarely tend to track our internal communication. And that's the piece that probably matters more, right? So how often do you send out an email on Friday to your team, get to the Tuesday team meeting and have to repeat yourself? Yeah, if someone didn't open the email on Friday, how often do you have to ask someone, hey, did you see my email? Those are the kinds of things you can begin to measure. It's a little more abstract. And then in employee feedback, a lot of times we, do pulse checks verbally, but get to the point that you've got, a Friday survey that goes out every week. And, some weeks you get feedback, some weeks you don't. Little things like that are going to end up making communication a lot easier because you're building these lines of communication where your team's constantly telling you things. And when they tell you things, listen. So they're telling you things that'll make you better. All right. Next, guess what? Your team, they're your influencers. They're the ones that make a difference. I kind of like to consider this one of your key structural elements. When we go back to that foundation that we built and we put the kitchen together, your team is the door jamb and the door. And if you look at it to say, okay, the door is my people and the door jamb are my processes. They're the structure that I'm giving for my people to work in, right? As soon as you get that door jamb to align with your door, you're able to open and close that door as often and as quickly as you need, right? And that's the goal. You want to be able to build that structure of your entire organization that no matter where you are in the building, no matter which door you open, which room you're in, which one you're adding on to, everything aligns well together. Your team is how you get there. And so morale matters for this piece. We often say we like to bring people and processes together, get the right processes, streamline them, empower your people, and you've got success right there in a formula. And it matters for a variety of reasons, but the biggest being that your growth hinges from your team. You are only as great as the people in your company. And as a leader, we are often the limiting factor in our companies. And so we have to be cognizant of those two pieces at all times. And when we look at our team dynamics and we build the right structure and the right culture in our team, then we also improve our retention. And as we all know, finding new talent right now, I know Lori sent out a fantastic article on that. It's hard. It's extremely hard. And so finding the right people to fit in your culture is extremely important. Keeping them is even more valuable. And then, of course, much like the communication, building camaraderie and support, team dynamics are where your trust stems from. So when we look at these KPIs, I think you'll see a few that you probably have seen before, but I think we've added a few in here too that you'll understand why they're a little bit different. So, Justin.
Yeah, and like Marie said, a lot of these you've definitely seen before. First of which, I know you have employee satisfaction score. Ties in with basically everything, all of the areas of organizational health, followed by employee retention, as well as client retention. Clients know when your team gets along and especially when they don't get along, as well as your trust ratings. So this one's a little bit seemingly more abstract, but this refers to what extent do team members feel like they can rely on others to adequately accomplish their responsibilities? So how well is that delineation of responsibilities working? So with that, Marie.
Yeah, so we've gone through a lot of KPIs, some of them repetitive on purpose, and some of them a little fresh. So what we did was we summarized these for you so that when you get the slide deck later, you'll actually have all of them on one page. And so we kind of want to take a pause here and ask so I know several of you said even that you track KPIs. Were any of your KPIs on this list? Yeah, I'm seeing some heads. Are there any that aren't on this list that you use? Because I'd love to hear about them. So nobody has any different ones. I'm leaving the floor. Ted, I saw you come off mute. No. Okay. Elliot.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it, but we track gross margin as a target also, right? Revenue minus the cost to earn that revenue.
Yep, absolutely. Does anybody track profitability by client or by service or division in your company?
Yeah, we do. That's exactly what I was going to say. We track it by both project type and by client.
Good. That's great. And Ted saying by product group. Absolutely. What about training costs? Does anybody do any kind of tracking of how much training a team member's done, the amount of professional development in a year? So that's one that you might consider if you're looking at how do I improve the team that I've got, or how do I support my team? We all love learning, at least most of us, right? And so I think a lot of times if we can provide, a count of professional development or performance ratings, things like that for your team that you might use on an annual review. I don't suggest annual reviews. I suggest at least quarterly, but definitely look at that as an option for building your team up. All right. So trying to think, has anybody got anything else? We're going to go back to that whole question we had earlier about a goal. So I'd love to hear someone's goal. If not, I've got a couple that we can run through. All right. Does anybody want to share a quick goal for the year?
Ed, do you have anything you can share?
I have something, if no one else does.
Go for it, Steve.
Pardon me. Lori and Marie, you guys probably know that historically I've been doing a lot of biz dev tied to LinkedIn and how many contacts I make and such like that. I'm sort of changing my mode right now and looking into how many power partners I make contact with every month. So it's about call tracking, but very focused, and sort of back to my roots where I began in one-on-one networking. So from that, I'll be sort of changing my mode of how many computer consultants I call every week to see about doing mutual referrals.
So is the goal then to increase referrals between kind of professional network connections? Is that the goal that you're trying to go for, Steve?
The ultimate goal is one new customer a month.
Got it.
Because
in my mind, I actually feel like you could also set a goal for the number of referrals in a month. So new clients is great. But then knowing how many of them come from referrals is also helpful. So I think that might be nice to kind of see, okay, how many am I going to get on my own cold call, however it is? How many is my network bringing to me? And then I think one of the things you can start to look at over time is whether it's, every quarter you look at it or every year over year, you look at it, but how much of my time needs to go where? Because if I'm starting to see that my referrals are bringing me 2 new clients every month, without question, I need to work on my referral network more. If I'm more productive and get more clients out of just going and cold calling on my own, then that's where I need to probably put more of my time and effort. So I think that's a way to use your KPIs that ultimately it's not a today thing. Again, it's kind of a rear view mirror. How do I adjust for tomorrow? But it's definitely maybe a consideration, is setting a goal for, I'd like to see 12 new contracts this year, but I want 5 to come out of referrals. And you
You're
may not
sort
have
of-
the data yet.
You're sort of forecasting, in a way, what I've already done for the last year. The last year was all about looking at an alternative to me doing the one-on-ones with the computer consultant referral side. It was about me reaching out through LinkedIn mechanisms and then actually getting one-on-one conversations with prospective clients or other influencers and comparing that to the referral network. So in a word, I did that, which led me full circle back to the referral side of the world, that the cold, new contact development, in the end, looking at the numbers, was not as productive as working one-on-one with influencers and power partners.
I love that you know
For
that.
my business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, so here's another question I kind of have, and this is really for everybody, is how many of us have several service lines or service offerings? More than one option, basically, for someone to choose. I'm seeing some head nods. So do you ever look at your client mix, your service mix? Do you know, for any attorneys, do you know how much of your business comes from estate planning versus real estate? Do you know those percentages? Yes, I'm seeing some heads yes, and some are kind of like, maybe. So that's something to look at. Look at your profitability by service line, and then look at your mix. So you may be extremely profitable when you do estate planning versus real estate transactions in a law office, but ultimately all you're doing is real estate. And 90% of your business is over here, and it's not as profitable if you could shift so look at that as well. I think that's one of the things that oftentimes we use KPIs to tell us what's going on in the business, but you can also use them to tell you how to change your business or how to make it stronger. From an operations standpoint, if you're not delivering your projects every time, why? And, if project satisfaction is low, what's causing that? You're going to have to start to dig in when you see things change. If you see a downward trend in something you didn't expect, you have to dig in. So use your KPIs to tell you where to look. One of the things that we like to look at when we look at the operations pieces of companies is, how accurate is your project plan? How often do you know where you actually stand in a project? How often do you know the status of a client? For those that have recurring services that happen month over month, what kind of communication pieces do you have for your client, number one, but then for yourself as a leader and as for your division managers, even to say, okay, what does my team need to know? What does the individual need to know that's doing the work to be able to stay on point? If you're running a healthcare practice and you're looking at your billing, what's my, how many charges are going out on time? What's the charge lag? How often do I have to wait to send out a bill? Same thing for, if you're sending out an invoice for doing a new website. How long does it take to get paid? Should I be breaking this up by phases of project? How long does it take for the project to be completed? So there's a lot that you can track that is really about your processes that ultimately can change the revenue in your business, as well as the ability for your team to increase their bandwidth. I think a lot of times we look at our business and we say, well, how can we make more money? One of our goals this year is simply to streamline, right? We want to be able to provide more services, but not necessarily max out our team. And so how do we do that? How do we build those processes to where things make more sense? They're easier to put out, and our clients still get the quality of product they expect. So questions to kind of ask yourself. What other KPIs do you guys have? So we've added a couple to this list. We've got client mix, service mix, profitability by client or service, referral rates.
Can you talk a little bit about, I'm interested in knowing more about the client satisfaction. I feel like that's something that I wish I had a better handle on, but it's not necessarily easy access. Do you have like a favorite method or recommendations for like kind of how to reach out? I'd prefer to do it more personal than like a I don't know, like an email survey or something, but yeah, can you talk a little bit about that?
So I actually tend to do it in a, we tend to do it kind of twofold. So I agree with you on wanting it to be personal. I think that it's kind of going back to that communication piece. Sometimes when people want to have uncomfortable conversations and say, you know, this is not really going the way, they're very likely not going to want to do that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So the survey allows them to do it a little more gently, but still tell their truth type thing. So a lot of times we recommend sending it out regularly, number one. So are your services recurring? Do they happen every month, or are they project based?
Project based mostly.
Okay. So I would suggest then, depending on the length of your projects, if they're shorter, 6 months or less, do it at the end and send out a survey. You could also send out a request and have an actual, you know, as you're wrapping up the project, do your closeout call. And then at the end of that call, say, hey, by the way, I'd like to just do a quick 15 minutes here in a couple of weeks, and we'll just talk through kind of any suggestions you have. Bring on all the team members that were involved in the project and truly do a quick 15-minute call with the client and say, hey, what'd you think? And that gives them time to think. It doesn't put them on the spot. Then you can also send a follow-up survey. One of the things that Nikki does a great job of with our team is we send a follow-up survey to a lot of our clients, and it's actually marketing intended. And the way we do it is we say, hey, we want your permission to use this in marketing if you're open to that. But really, we just want your feedback is what we want. And so we actually have questions on there that we're not going to really use in marketing, but are you willing to refer us to someone else? Would you use us again? Those are the questions. Those 2 questions alone tell you how important you were in that process of what they just went through with you. So asking them if they would refer you and asking them if they'd use you again, those are incredibly important in that survey. And then Nikki, what are some of the
do you
other...
say if it's no, do you ask why? Like that seems like
Yes.
that'd be critical.
You absolutely do. So, and that's where, you know, Nikki will send me a survey and she'll say, hey, this is the feedback, and we share it with the team. Right. And so we celebrate the things that come through positively. And then in the case that, thankfully we tend to catch it well before if we have any issues, and you probably do too, Kelly, you can kind of sense it. But if you didn't, and for some reason you get all the way down there and they're like, no, I'm not referring you. You pick up the phone and you call and you say, hey, I just noticed this. I'd love to figure out what we did that we could, you know, change for future clients, and say, you know, and correct it, right? Address it, have that intentional and uncomfortable conversation potentially. But yes, absolutely address it. Yeah.
Yeah,
and Nikki,
that makes sense. Thanks.
I don't know if you want to add anything to that from kind of the marketing perspective, but.
Yeah, Kelly, so Marie's talking a lot about aided surveys, which is basically you're aiding, excuse me, you're aiding the conversation. What do you want to know? What do you want your team to know? There's also an unaided option, which is helpful for you to grow. So you mentioned sending out just a random survey. Although that doesn't seem personalized and helpful, it's helpful in terms of, 1, who is your target market? 2, what size of companies need your services? So you may be either playing too big or too small, or you might be perfect right in the middle. And then also, are there service areas in business that you are not maximizing on? So if you're specifically in the healthcare business, but you send out an unaided survey, you're now receiving back, oh, wow, software industry really could use my services in A, B, and C. And now you have a whole different client list and target market. So yeah, but we use both. And to Marie's point, definitely do the hard conversations, which are always no fun, but it makes you better. And then the unaided will also allow you to basically open your mind to where are you going and how can you get better, and discover those uncovered markets that maybe you didn't think about before.
Yeah. And that totally resonates with me. I actually would welcome more negative, like more complaints, because that would help us more. It's great to hear, hey, this was fun, great job, we love the work, but that doesn't necessarily, it's affirming and it's validating, but it's not necessarily as improvement focused. So I would love to initiate a few more of those conversations about, even if it's small things that we can do better. So thank you, that was really helpful.
And Kelly, to point that out as well, I'm sorry, Marie, it maybe with that said, I mean, obviously you're hitting it out of the park and doing very, very well. Also maybe try an area that you aren't quite comfortable in that's probably where you're going to get more feedback where you need to improve on. So if there's an area that you guys have really been trying to go back and forth on, like, oh, this could be profitable, but we're not sure, just try it. And you can do it undiscovered. You can do it under the radar, right? Like you can go into a client and say, you know, you go through your whole thing, and then it's opening up the door saying, oh, they might really need marketing. Their brand's not quite that great, or their operations isn't that great. And that's an area that your team has already talked about trying to move into in 2022, and just start slowly planting the seed. And then as you get into that more, I'm sure there'll be areas where they're saying, well, you know, because that's not your typical strong suit, if you will.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. And it's not like I think we're perfect. I just know that that's not something people normally will come and be like, hey, let me give you a little negative feedback. So I just want to like open up that line of communication, because it is so helpful when people do. So I want to make it easy for them.
Yeah. And when you do that, like kind of post-project check-in call where you're, you know, hey, let's do 15 minutes just to see how things went. Specifically ask, what could we have done differently or done better? And so we can send out our kind of list of questions that we usually recommend on a survey like that. And we'd be happy to share them out with you guys. And that way, Kelly, if that's helpful, you can use them.
That'd be awesome. You know, I'd love that.
Create a script for those calls that you're always asking the same questions. And then that way you start collecting that data too. So,
yeah.
And Kelly, last point, I'm sorry. I would even suggest maybe going into your professional network and doing freebies. Do freebies on people that, and maybe not give away your whole package, obviously, but go in with freebies so that you're getting more, obviously a little more expertise under your belt, but at the same time, these are people that have no technical skin in the game, if you will. So, and be very transparent. Hey, I want to improve, or this is an area I want to start implementing within my business. Can I use you basically as a guinea pig? And I want you to rip it apart, sort of thing. Because I think that too will help toughen up the skin if you choose to move forward with a particular idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks again.
All right. Yeah, you're welcome. Dawn, I think you had a question as well. Would you like us to try to tackle?
No, you know, and it was kind of going back to what you and Steve were talking about, kind of tracking where your clients are coming from. And one of the areas we're seeing more and more referrals from existing clients. So I think one of the things I would like to concentrate on this year is, how do we get more like that? Like, you know, is there a good way to go to existing clients to say, hey, do you know anybody that, you know, would like to work with us? You know, it seems a little, you know, I don't know what the word is. It just seems like I shouldn't do it, but I think I should, you know.
Well, and I think, you know, Dawn, they're with you because you're good at it, right? There's a reason they're still there. And, you know, I think there's a couple different angles you could tackle it with. And, you know, my first, like out the gate, is to actually do something along the lines of find one of your clients that did refer another. If you guys have a monthly newsletter that you send out to all your existing clients, feature those two. Have a, you know, Zoom interview where you sit down with them, and we've done this with some of our clients, and we say, what is it that you enjoy so much about the services we offer? Why did you refer this new client to us? And then that will actually get people to think, oh, that's, you know, I should send such and such to these folks, right? And then you kind of are getting their brain thinking that way. And then do a formal campaign. You know, I know Nikki does a wonderful job of setting up our campaigns to where we actually are outreach. And I know we've got kind of, we're going to show you here in just a second, this live. But the whole intent is to say, look, we're offering this to you because we know it's helped you. We want to help others, right? Or we know that it's helped others and we want to help you. So there's kind of that ability. And then, you know, depending on how formal you want to make it, there are ambassador style programs you could put together. You could say, hey, for every new client you refer, we'll give you a 5% discount on the next month's bill. You know, so give them an incentive to do it.
Yeah.
But absolutely tracking where your clients are coming from and seeing what percentage comes from where. And then to your point, you know, it's referrals are the, you know, cheapest usually to acquire. So, you know, it's a good place to start for sure.
Thanks.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, you guys. Well, I know we've got just a few minutes left, so this has been a great conversation. I'm excited that you guys you're already thinking this way. I do want Justin to have a chance to kind of share some of our kind of quick tips on how you maintain these results as you start to see them. So, Justin, I'm going to throw it over to you real quick.
Yeah, and we'll kind of breeze through these, but we've talked about which KPIs to consider, how they can measure your success, and which areas of health to focus on. But here's kind of the ways to manage and create that sustainable change. So number one, right here is a key performance indicator dashboard to monitor overall company health, and that should maintain each of your organization's KPIs in an easily accessible format. Number two, we have develop an action plan for transformation and change management. And within that, make sure that every action item has a task owner and a due date. Number three, we have develop a committee focused on implementing change initiatives. And we've kind of talked about that one before, but that's very important. Number four, hire someone whose job it is to champion the change, or if you can't hire externally, ensure that you have an internal change champion who will maintain that enthusiasm and keep the organization's attention on the change. Number five, create a cadence for change through recurring meetings. So along with the change champion and the committee, this ensures that you maintain that focus on the necessary change initiatives. Number six, assign a clear host or a facilitator for each meeting. And number seven, celebrate. So like we say, even the smallest changes should be highlighted.
Yes. So as you can imagine, we love to celebrate on our team. It's just one of the things we do. And I think one of the key pieces and part of what we're going to kind of share with you guys today is we oftentimes do audits, right? And so one of the things that we saw really success in last year, and it was really more in our larger companies, was, we do very large full-scale audits. But instead, we are working on kind of, you guys are our community, and we wanted to make sure that we had something for you guys that could support you. So Nikki, I'm going to kind of give this slide over to you, but we have a little gift for you guys.
The easiest part, I get the last two. So, so as a gift, we want to thank everybody for joining us today. And we're really glad that you guys were able to be a part of this. We know it's early. It's not as early for me on the East Coast, but as a part of a thank you to you guys, we want to offer you guys a free mini operations audit. So if you're wanting to learn more about your company's strengths and weaknesses, or where you have the most opportunities in your operations for optimization, then this is definitely something you probably want to consider. Like I said, it's completely free. So it'll include a free mini assessment. We'll review all your operations, communication, team dynamics, and also your organizational structure, as Marie and Justin mentioned, kind of those puzzle pieces. And then it'll include a free workshop with our team. So we dive into those results that we went through with that mini assessment. And then we'll actually make a tailored action plan specific for your findings. And then we actually give you an implementation guide as well. So this will give you a guide on how to make the changes based off the assessment that you want to change and make strides in your company. And then you have full access to us. So we'll go through all your project management, your organizational structure, communications within your team. So if you're interested, we would love to have you, and you can just send me an email. I think my email's up there. Yeah. So you can send me an email or reach out to Lori, and we would be happy to connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, you guys, I had a couple of folks when I sent this out to the group said, I think our company's too small for this. You might find that the survey is a little robust, but it might actually allow you to also consider, okay, these are the areas I need to assess as we grow. So even if you feel like you might be a little too small, your team's smaller, please still feel free to take the assessment and sit down with us and we'll brainstorm with you. We're happy to do it. So,
and I think the KPIs. So if you're a one-man team, I think it still is helpful for those KPIs that maybe you haven't considered or want to tune up.
all right.
And then we have an event coming up on February 1st at noon Central Time. It will be online Zoom, just like this, and it will be the top 5 ways to enhance your business operations in 2022. So how to enhance your business operations to bring laser focus to your processes and your people. So if this is something you want to attend, again, you can email me, or you can actually go onto our site, boostmidwest.com/events, and just go to the events tab and you can RSVP there.
All right. Well, we've got tons of resources for you, and we are so grateful to have had your time today. I know it's right on the hour. So Lori, I'm going to throw it back over to you.